Hello and welcome back to the Blogger Genius podcast. I'm your host, Jillian Leslie. I'm also co-founder of MiloTree. At MiloTree, we create tools to help bloggers, creators, and entrepreneurs like you grow your audiences and sell digital products. With features like AI-generated sales pages, pop-ups, and lead magnets, our platform is simple, effective, and affordable. Check it out at milotree.com. Today, I have Bjork Ostrom joining me. Bjork is the co-founder of the hugely popular Pinch of Yum food blog and Food Blogger Pro, a membership site and podcast for food bloggers and online creators. In this episode, we dive into how food blogging has evolved over the years and what trends are shaping the space today. We also talk about the power of personal branding and how authenticity is becoming essential in a world dominated by AI. And we talk about the importance of testing and iterating ideas quickly to find success in a competitive online space. Bjork shares so many golden nuggets about adapting to change, finding opportunities, and building online businesses in 2025 and beyond. Whether you're a blogger, creator, or entrepreneur, this episode is packed with actionable advice. So without further delay, here is my interview with Bjork Ostrom. Bjork, welcome to the Blogger Genius podcast.
Hey, excited to be here. Jillian, thanks. We're doing a podcast swap, so it feels like we could just, we'll just keep going back and forth. It'll be like a phone tag, but it'll be podcast tag. So I'm it this week.
Yes, what we discovered was I was on your podcast in, you said, 2017.
I know, it's crazy. Time it simultaneously feels like it goes by so quick, and also it feels like, man, 2017 was a very different time to be an entrepreneur, very different time in the world in general, but especially for people creating content on the web, it was also a very different time.
So before we really launch in about food blogging today, your podcast is Food Blogger Pro, and will you share briefly your journey,
Sure.
and your wife's journey, and how you started your podcast, your businesses, and where you are right now?
Yep. So my wife Lindsay and I like to think that we lucked out, and I often say that along with luck, luck wears overalls, and this idea that like the harder you work, the luckier you are. But I do feel like a huge variable within all of it is luck. And one of the ways that we lucked out was that we both were interested in complementary things. The thing that Lindsay's interested in is social media. She's interested in recipe development. She's interested in photography. I'm interested in, business growth, search engine optimization, almost like business processes. And those two things paired really well. We didn't know that. It's like we weren't super strategic in deciding we're going to launch this thing that, dividing up and saying Lindsay's going to do this and I'm going to do this and here's the thing we're going to build. It just by chance happened to work out that way. But 14 years ago, we started a recipe site. Lindsay was posting content to social media like Facebook at the time, and it was recipe content. We were early married, and she was just interested in cooking for both of us. Eventually got to the point where she was like, maybe there's somewhere else that we could direct this like creative interest. And I had been listening to the book Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk. And in that book, he talks about this idea of if you are interested in worms and worming, which is the thing, then you could create a successful business online. And so I thought, okay, like that probably translates to other things as well. It's an analogy that he's using for the broader concept around the web being able to reach a lot of people. And so it definitely could apply to food. The user base for food is much bigger. And so Lindsay had already kind of had this bend towards publishing food content. So we said, maybe there's a place to do this and make something of it. And so we sat down one night and we thought of names. We came up with Pinch of Yum, like pinch of salt, like you're going to put a pinch of something in a recipe. Pinch of Yum, and started it on a Tumblr site, eventually realized that's not the best site, moved it over to WordPress, and started the incremental process of, we had 10 people. What if we could get 15 people to the site? We made $1. What if we could make $2? And as we started to do that, once a month, I would come on and say to the site, I would post to the site and say, here's what we learned. And it was a chance for me to kind of talk about the things that I was interested in within the world of food, which is like the business side of it. And as we did that, we started to get a following of people who were interested in publishing food content online. And we realized that there was probably an opportunity to create content there. And that's where we created Food Blogger Pro. So that was kind of the early origin story of how we had these complementary businesses, Pinch of Yum, Food Blogger Pro, and worked together to build those through the years. So here we are a decade plus later, still showing up and publishing content to Pinch of Yum, still showing up publishing content to Food Blogger Pro. And we have some other businesses now that we've created around those companies, but that's really the origin for us, is those two businesses.
What I love about your story is that you saw opportunities, not necessarily knowing where they were going to lead.
Yeah.
But just kept showing up and digging. Like I talk about, when you're building businesses, you're a miner mining for gold. Yep. And you're going, okay, I think there might be gold here in this hill, but let me start digging and see. And then when you strike, even seeing what I call gold specks, like, oh, dig deeper, dig deeper. So you have no idea where it's going to lead. And yet, just by following what's working, where it's connecting, you can actually build a really successful business.
Yeah, and I think, people often talk about, hey, you should do what you're passionate about and you'll never work a day in your life, which I think is really good advice, because it allows you to start with a thing that you're interested in, that you're passionate about. But I think what you need to be open to is you need to be open to the potential that might shift or change a little bit. And you might end up somewhere where you're passionate about the thing still, but it's maybe not where you thought you were going to go. And I think there's a spectrum, and the spectrum is like pure passion to pure business. And I know people who are all across that spectrum, and the people who are pure business, it's probably going to be a little bit easier for them to get to something that is revenue producing earlier, because they're kind of like genre and content agnostic, business model agnostic. Hey, I'm just trying to find a business and build it because that's the thing they're passionate about. Other people you'd have on the other side of the spectrum are like really passionate about a certain thing. I love golf. I want to do golf, and I want to create a golf YouTube channel. That's still, you can find success there, but it might be a little bit harder if you are more insistent on an idea and seeing that idea live within the world, as opposed to looking, like you said, and mining and saying, where is there something here? And you might get into the golf world and realize, like, actually, I'm producing these golf videos, but then I have a lot of friends who are asking me to come out and shoot a video of them swinging because they want to see what their swing looks like. And so then you do that, and it's actually really helpful, and you kind of coach them on it. And then you realize, wait, there's a business here, and the business is high-end 360-degree analysis of a golf swing when you thought you were going to be a golf influencer. But because you saw that gold fleck and you started mining, you created a business out of it. So I think if you're on the end of the spectrum where you're more open to just business for the sake of business, one of the skills you can develop is around seeing where there is a need and understanding that need and trying to find a way to fill it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is about finding the connection. This is what I like. This is where people are responding to me. How can I monetize this connection? I've talked to so many bloggers and entrepreneurs. They come to me and they go, oh my God, I have a great idea for a digital product. And I go, where'd you come up with this idea? And they go, in the shower. And I go, okay, now what you need to do is go talk to people and see if this isn't just your great idea you had in the shower. Stop, do not build this out until you've gotten feedback on this idea, because God forbid you spend the next 4 years working on your business that came from this spark that might be like a beautiful spark. But I call it the difference between building your business inside out versus outside in. Inside out is I have a great idea in the shower. If I like it, everybody's going to like it. Versus I'm starting to get feedback. I'm starting to pay attention to what people are asking me. Like, I didn't know they had this question. Oh, is there some way I can mind that, even like in my niche, or like you were saying, whoa, I never thought about golf swings before. And so I think that when I talk to entrepreneurs, the ones that I find who are the most successful understand the concept of outside in business building versus inside out business building.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it also requires you to you alluded to this a little bit. It requires you to not think that your idea is the greatest idea out there. And you're not trying to defend your idea, you're trying to shape your idea. And an example in my world is I've had this thought that it wasn't a shower idea, but it was like falling asleep at night at a conference. And a lot of people had been talking about a bunch of different things. And I thought, man, I wonder if there's an opportunity for creators to come around and invest into like CPG brands via a single vehicle. They would call it a syndicate. And so I was kind of curious about that idea. And so what I did was I just started to talk to people about it. I just started to practice, even for myself, explaining what the idea was, but then to hear back from people what they felt like, to kind of poke holes in it, what they felt like maybe some parts of the idea that made sense and other things that didn't. And it started with Lindsay. Hey, Lindsay, I had this thought. What do you think about it? But then I was at another meetup and I said, hey, anybody who has thoughts on this, here's this thing I'm thinking about. I would love to hear your feedback on it. And what it does is very quickly, in this meetup that I was a part of, there was maybe 40 other people. People can't help but start to then work on that problem once you put it in front of them. Like that's just how the brain works. And so if you have an idea and you're trying to work on it, part of what you need to do is just talk to people about it, because what you're doing is for 3 minutes, for 4 minutes, for 15 minutes, you're getting that person to join your team, and all of their ideas and knowledge and connection, naturally what people are going to do is they just want to make a connection. They want to talk about it. And so one of the skills that you can develop as somebody who's looking to build a business is the skill of talking about the thing that you are trying to create in order to make connections and to get feedback and to shape the idea. But you have to be comfortable not being defensive against your idea. Hey, this is no, and get negative feedback on it. Not to take that as negative feedback to you. It's just the idea, and the ideas needs to be shaped and adjusted and changed. And one of the best ways to do that is to get that feedback from other people.
And also to hear yourself communicate the idea. It's almost like I have to play things out in my head over and over again, communicate it, say, do you get it? Like even to say, what am I saying? Like, where's the benefit? Like asking people to workshop your own idea with you, not just, yes, you want that feedback, but also to clarify it in your own mind. Like we can live in our own echo chambers. We can believe anything. And it's only when you go out, and it's scary, you go out and you potentially can be embarrassed, but get embarrassed early versus later when you've spent 4 years on this.
Yeah, totally.
Like be willing to take risks and go, hey, I know it sounds weird, or I haven't fully fleshed this out, or what does this sound like to you? So I love that idea. And I do the exact same thing. There are a couple people that especially David and I, are constantly going, is this crazy? Or this is what I'm thinking. And you can start to feel it growing and emerging. Almost, there is something called emergent business building. I live in Austin. And I see it in Austin. There's the nice mall here in Austin called the Domain. And it's like one of those outside kind of planned community. It's got apartments. It's got the Apple store. It's got the Lululemon. It's got tech companies, but it all feels kind of planned. And it's somewhat sterile, but, nice, especially if you want any of those kinds of experiences. But the cool part about Austin is it'll be like a crappy strip mall and with like a tire store or some sort of dry cleaner, stuff that you'd be like, God, that's been there for a long time. And somebody should just raise this whole strip mall. And then a weird coffee place will show up. And in this weird strip mall where you'd never want to be, but that coffee place is kind of cool and they play cool music. And then next to that will be like a ramen place, not like a nice ramen place, but like a really good, delicious ramen place. And then all of a sudden you notice that strip mall that you would never think to go to becomes cool. And businesses find it. And then all of a sudden, like at the strip mall next door, something like a weird succulent plant store will open.
Yeah.
And it's this emergent experience. And I see it so much in Austin because you've got a crazy idea for something. Hey, chances are you can find some cheap real estate and try it out. So for us, we started with a party ideas site and now we're a software company. And It's like, how did we get from here to here? Like if I tell that story, it's kind of crazy, but it's also not crazy.
Yeah. And part of it is you find the door that's open and you walk through it. And that doesn't happen unless you are out there creating, publishing, having conversations, putting yourself out there. Like that's the important piece within all of this. And I think it's less, it's strategy, but it's less like business tactics and it's more headspace mindset. Yeah.
On your podcast, which we recorded last week, I introduced the concept that I share a lot called B-work. And I love that you pushed back and you said, I'm not sure, my idea of B-work, it's still above average. It's just not A+ work. And you go, yeah, but if Lindsay's making recipes, like she can't be putting out B- recipes that might turn out, might not turn out.
Right.
And so I went off and I thought a lot about that. And I thought, oh my God, when I talk about B- work, the contract you have with your audience is that you are an expert at something. Now, I'm not saying capital E expert. We talked about this, but I need to know something where I can help you. That is non-negotiable. That's your trust. That's your commitment. That's like you putting your credibility on the line. But as we're talking about emergent business building, so I'm going to be that coffee shop that opens up in that weird, ugly strip mall, but I have something. I'm going to serve amazing coffee or amazing pastries, or I'm going to, have the coziest couches. But I haven't figured out everything about it because maybe somebody comes in and goes, hey, it would be better if you stayed open these hours versus these hours, or like stuff I wouldn't know. And that's where B- work comes in. It's you workshopping your idea and getting it maybe to a place where it might be something. But if you have to make it perfect before you launch it, that's where I find people hold themselves back. They get hamstrung. They are spending those 4 years building out this business.
Yeah.
So it's really know that you have a contract, a promise, which is I can do something to make your life better, to solve a problem for you. And that's non-negotiable. But everything else is negotiable. And that's where I say the faster you can move, the better.
Yep. And I think there's something to be said about product versus packaging. And I think sometimes what happens is people obsess about packaging and they think that's the thing that's going to make them successful. But really what's going to make you successful is the product. And in the coffee shop example, the packaging is probably the location. It's probably the signage in front. It maybe is, the aesthetic of the place when you go in. The product is the coffee. That is the thing that if somebody's really deep in the world of coffee, they're going to know good coffee. And if you go into a place and you're like, oh my goodness, this is incredible coffee, that's what's going to make a difference. As opposed to, let's say it's a company that's obsessed about the packaging. It's like really nice. You go in there, everything is perfect. The music is perfect. The graphic design is perfect. But then you get coffee and it's lukewarm and it doesn't taste good. That's going to be a business that probably will struggle. And so I think, and it's a little bit of, when we had that conversation before, what we came out of it with was this idea of, in our world, I think that can translate to somebody obsessing about the logo and the design and, having the perfect camera and getting a $4,000 DSLR instead of using their iPhone. And all of that is good. It will help. But if the actual product, and in our case, the product is the content, if that's not good, it doesn't really matter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to say one last thing too. Not only would I say the product is the coffee, it's the vibe.
Sure.
It's the people that work there. It's how passionate they are about the coffee. It's how welcoming they are. This intangible feeling, and the same thing for content creators, especially today, more than before, where your content just had to be good content. Now, what's the vibe you're wrapping around it? Because are you somebody who, again, is welcoming, warm? Maybe you've got, maybe you're Southern, maybe you're from a different country, maybe you're at a different stage in life, and that informs who you are. But I feel like now your vibe is so valuable that it is part of that content.
Yeah. I feel like, part of it too is a consideration of what type of creator are you? Are you purely information? There's three buckets really. It can be information, education, inspiration. Education, inspiration, entertainment. Thank you. And if you are somebody who is more entertainment oriented as a content creator, that's going to be, your focus is going to be very different than if you're education focused. And there's a little bit, I think, of a liability with people who are purely education focused, in that transactional exchange of information is becoming commoditized, because what's happening is people are going to different places with that. They're using voice chat. Like, I've been starting to use the advanced voice with ChatGPT more when I have questions and just have a conversation around it. But I still listen to a podcast on investing from an expert who I trust, and I'm interested to hear what they have to say. Much like people are listening to this, even though you could probably go to ChatGPT and get some ideas for how to grow your business or grow your website or grow your following. But it's helpful to hear from people who are actually doing it. So I think that's another consideration when you talk about vibe, is like that as a content creator, your ability to connect with somebody, which would translate into, the vibe of a coffee shop, your ability to connect with somebody on a relational level is going to become more valuable over the next decade as information exchange becomes more of a commodity.
Want to grow your email list fast? I've got a freebie just for you. 3 AI prompts to help you create an irresistible cheat sheet in just 10 minutes. Once it's ready, use MiloTree to share it effortlessly. Upload your freebie. Let our AI create your opt-in page. Share that page everywhere. We'll even deliver your cheat sheet to your subscribers for you. Your email list is the key to making money online. Don't wait. Grab your free prompts now at milotree.com/freebie prompts. That's milotree.com/freebie prompts. And now back to the show. So given that you really have your finger on the pulse of food blogging, not just for your own successful food blog, but just in general working with other food bloggers, I would argue that food blogging started back in the day with I'm going to share my favorite recipes, and this is my aunt's pumpkin pie, and I used to go to her house and whatever. And then it moved away from no, Just get to the recipe, get to the information. And then it became, not only are you going to blog about your pumpkin pie, but it's now going to be everything there is to know about pumpkins.
Mm-hmm.
So canned pumpkins versus fresh pumpkins, how to peel a pumpkin, how to scoop out a pumpkin, how to whatever. And it did, I think, move in that direction of and to be honest, I feel like that was a Google play.
Yeah.
I want to show authority to Google. I'm going to answer all the questions around this blog post. It wasn't as fun. It was like chasing low competition keywords, almost gamifying the whole thing.
Yep.
And I'm feeling things start to switch, start to flip. So could you speak to that? Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it has to do with, like you said, Google was rewarding sites that had content that was more comprehensive. And so then what you would do is people would see that, and everybody's very smart. And so you start to see, if you're creating a post that's comprehensive, let's say it's pumpkin pie, and you have the history of pumpkins, and you have how to freeze a pumpkin, how to pick a pumpkin, like all of these different parts of a comprehensive pumpkin pie article or recipe, you'll probably get more search traffic from it. But then you'd hear from users who would say, what in the world? Like, I'm looking for a recipe. I'm not looking for this comprehensive article. And so you had a little bit of a disconnect where I think Google was doing a poor job of giving people what they said they wanted. A lot of times what was happening is there'd be a long-term, like a long tail considerations. Let's say you included history of pumpkin pies. There's somebody who's going to search, like, where did pumpkin pies come from? It's not a lot of people, but there might be people searching for that. And so the idea is long tail, meaning a long keyword. So pumpkin would be an example of a really short keyword. Where did pumpkin pie recipes originate from would be a long tail keyword. So it's a very long tail versus a short keyword. And so if you have an article that has all of these different sections to it, you'll probably catch some of those long tail keywords. But the thought was, the more comprehensive the article it is, the better chance you're going to have of also ranking for things that are shorter keywords as well. And so it was, part of it is it was working, but then people didn't really like it. And then users didn't really like it because they had all this additional information they didn't really want. They just wanted the recipe. About a year ago, Google released Helpful Content Update. That shifted things all over the place. There's a lot of different elements involved with that. But one of the things that you heard within that was, a shift back to being more brand-centric, more human-centric, more personality-focused as a way to differentiate yourself against some of the more transactional pieces of content. And so you saw that shift happen where suddenly people were thinking about, how do I be more personal? And I think you see some of that additional information starting to drop off a little bit. Not entirely. I think it still works to a certain degree. But I think there is a shift. And so, yeah, if you do this for a decade, you start to see these different seasons of ways to approach content creation. And I think the next season that we will be in will be a season of really personal content, because it's the one thing that AI can't do is be human. It can. Yet. It'll be right. Yeah. It'll be really good at creating recipes. It's, kind of there now, but it's not all the way there. I think there's still hallucinations that exist that could throw a recipe off. But I think right now it's like people are wanting to follow people, connect with people. Mm-hmm. To your point, like, it's going to get better and better at seeming like a human, being like a human, interacting like a human. But my bet is 5 years from now, people are still going to be following people. I think the presence of AI chat type tools to get information will still be pretty strong. But in 2030, I think we're still going to be listening to people. I think we're going to be talking to people. I think we're also going to be talking to AI and listening to AI more than we are now. So that's definitely a consideration. But I still think people-to-people information is still going to exist. And you even see that within search results. Like, the biggest benefiter from helpful content was Reddit. And Reddit is purely interaction on a human-to-human, most basic type of communication, which is like simple threads of text back and forth. The thought being that people are no longer trusting the results in Google. They just want to see what other people are learning and doing and implementing. And so Reddit's been has received a huge amount of traffic from the Helpful Content Update. The idea being, I think that Reddit is a place that people are going now because they want to see more human-to-human interaction. Even in a world where like AI exists, Reddit being the ultimate human platform is really benefiting.
Although you're starting to see people gamify Reddit.
Yeah, marketers ruin everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was funny because I remember the season before Google started to highlight Reddit where David, my husband, would be searching whatever his search term was, Reddit. And I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And he's like, I just want to hear from real people. So I agree with you. Like this personhood piece, I feel like we need it. And I think it will become more valuable over time. When you start to play these things out, again, you and I don't know anything. However, you can kind of go, well, I could see this trend happening and this trend. So do you think SEO has changed, is changing, will continue, and can you still drive traffic? And then I have a third part to this question.
Sure.
Is ad revenue, like that was such a big thing for food bloggers. Will that continue to be such a big piece of the pie?
Yeah. So I think it definitely has already changed. And I think some people listening to this, speaking specifically to SEO and search, it has already massively changed over the last year. And there are some people who have had their sites completely wiped out. I know those people. I'm sure you know those people. Worked really hard, created good content, maybe worked with a team of people, grew a site that was successful, and then there's an update, and then the traffic goes away, and now they don't have a business that's as valuable as it was the day before. So I think it already has changed. And I think if you're going to, like, for example, start a speaker review website to review speakers, man, that's going to be really hard. Like, that's a world that was hit really significantly, was the sites that did affiliate review type content. There's lots of other sites, food sites included, that were hit really hard as well with that update. So I think it's already changed. And I think it's harder today to build search traffic than it would have been 5 years ago. Not only because it's more competitive, there's more people creating the content, but also just the way that search results work, if that's going to be your primary platform. And Pinterest, like all of the social platforms are becoming more selfish with their traffic and trying to keep that internal. And you see that with Google too. Like, a search result 10 years ago, I was just looking at a video that randomly resurfaced, and it was me in 2017 talking about a search result issue we had with Pinch of Yum that we were fixing. It's like, oh man, these search result pages look so much different now, or then than they do now, or now than they did then. So I think it already has changed. I think you can still build a site and get traffic to it, and monetize that via ads. Like, we still see people doing that, joining a Mediavine or a Raptive and creating income from that. But I think it's harder. I would think of it more holistically as you are building a business online in a specialty, in a certain area, in a focus. And you are using all of the tools available to you to create the most compelling, helpful content on the web. And you need to pick and choose based on your skills and based on the platforms available and based on your target market and the genre of content that you're creating, where that's going to be. And so the decision I've made is podcasts. Like, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I like doing. That's where I feel most comfortable. I'm not writing blog posts. I'm not doing a YouTube channel. I'm doing podcasts. Like, that has worked for me. We work with sponsors. We're able to monetize that when those sponsors pay to be advertisers on the podcast. That's been great. For Pinch of Yum, it's advertising. We work with Raptive as our ad partner, and it's brands who pay us when we monetize on social media. We just had one of those go out today. We're partnering with a company in Florida's Natural Lemonade. So, like, we're talking about using Florida's Natural in products or in a recipe. So that's one of the ways that we monetize. But that doesn't require us to have a blog. That just is Instagram. And
That's so interesting. Remember back in the day, it was like, and now you need to write the blog post and then push it out on social, whereas social is its own thing now.
And even with brands, we've seen we've been doing it for 14 years and probably doing sponsored brand partnerships for 12 years. We've seen a significant shift from people wanting to be on the blog to not even mentioning it. I would say 90% of the conversations we have, people don't mention it. They're thinking of Instagram, they're thinking of TikTok. And I still think it's actually smart. If a company wants to produce written content, the long-term value of that, and that's usually where we see people being most interested, is a brand that doesn't necessarily think quarter to quarter, but they're just an internal brand. They're managing their marketing, and they say, Delalo is an example of a partner that we work with and produce blog content. The value that they've gotten through the years on that is awesome because it continues to live on our site. It's a sponsored piece of content that's going to always be there unless sometime we take it down, years down the line. So all that to say, I think for people who are trying to figure out what does it look like to be an entrepreneur in 2024 when you're building a business online, I would make the case that it's one of the best times. It's the best time ever to be a creator on the internet. Like, it's better now than it was 4 years ago. It's better now than it was 10 years ago.
Why?
I think because the platforms have been built in a way that allows you to easily create content. So the technicality of creating the content isn't the main hurdle. And companies have been conditioned as to the need for that to exist. We just got an email today from, it's an initiative that's trying to make a certain type of nut, I'll talk in generalities, more available in the Midwest that otherwise wouldn't have been. And as part of their grant, had an allocation for influencer budget. It's just like they get it. And you see that with politics, with government, like they're working with influencers to help spread messages. You see it with, big brands. You see it with small brands. Like, people are aware of the ability for somebody to move product and to have influence. That's why it's called influencer. I will say, I think it's important to point out it's a better time today than it ever has been for somebody who is especially talented at being a creator. And I think 10 years ago, you would have been at a competitive advantage if you were a decent creator, but extremely technical. Because when it was more difficult from a technical perspective, that's where that skill, you had an advantage in having that. I think as it becomes less technical to do things online, you and I are recording this on Riverside.
Right.
It's pretty intuitive. You go in, you press start, you press record.
Yeah.
So podcasting 10 years ago would have been much harder. And so somebody who was like a decent podcaster, but good at understanding all of the components that went into producing a podcast, they were going to have an advantage versus today, that same person who's decent, but not excellent is going to be the technical component of their skill set. It's going to be not as much as an advantage. And so when I look at the landscape today, I'm like, man, there are so many tools available for people who are really great at creating and connecting with an audience, at fulfilling that need that we talked about before, at building a community and have those natural talents, because the technical burden, not entirely, but much more so than 10 years ago, has been removed.
And I would say too, with AI, I love it. Now, I understand it could become our overlord, bad stuff could happen in the future, maybe even now, I don't know. However, for my day to day, she is my best friend.
Yeah.
So
how are you using it most?
I would say it is what you were just talking about, how you'll put your idea out and get people's feedback. So I guess I need to hear my own ideas or play around with my ideas to solidify them. And she's my best brainstorming partner. For example, I'm like, okay, we're restructuring something with MiloTree where we want to offer free parts of our product. Like, okay, how much of our product then should we offer for free? And I have an idea, but it's not fully baked. And if I can sit down and really just start with like, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think about this? Like, what am I saying? Just kind of sloppy, meaning it's like a conversation.
Yep.
I find I get the most insights that way. Now, will I use it? Don't tell my husband to write like a birthday card to my mother-in-law.
Sure.
I will. Or I use it for my newsletter so I don't have to start from zero.
Yep.
But where I find it so useful is in thinking. Now, what about you?
Yeah. I think Lindsay and I just had this conversation the other night. So we do, when we can, we'll get a babysitter on Friday night and go out. And we had this long conversation about AI, which sounds like, we have these really technical, in-depth conversations. I forget what I played her I'm trying to remember what it was. It was something that was like, oh my goodness, this
was it the podcast where
it was, there's like the Notebook LM, like the Google
my
stuff.
My husband played that for me.
Yeah, that wasn't it, but it was something like that. This is what it was. She had seen this nostalgic Instagram video, and it was Christmas in the 90s. And it was like, oh, do you remember Christmas in the 90s kind of thing? It was photos, it was Christmas music. And it was spot on for us, it would have been like peak Christmas, like Christmas in the 90s. And she sent it to a friend, and they went back and forth and like, gosh, do you remember some of this stuff? And then what she found out is she clicked into the account and started reading a little bit more, and it was all AI generated images. And she said it was the first time that she had interacted with a piece of content, assumed it to be real, and then eventually found out that it was none of what she had seen was real. And I think it felt especially tension producing, because what it was getting at was like, do you remember back in the day when things were simpler, when like we could disconnect, when you didn't have the internet, but the thing that actually created it was the thing that you are nostalgically reflecting on that not existing. Like it was before phones, it was before, internet was plugged into everything. And so anyways, it was kind of this moment for both of us where we were like, whoa, that's weird. And there's a lot to peel back on this. Anyway, so we started to have this conversation. She's like, what are you using it for right now? And what I said was, I have this belief, and I've heard people say this, and I think it's really true, that AI is not going to replace your job, but people who use AI are going to replace your job. And I think human in the loop type content creation, type business building is going to be, for the foreseeable future, the best way to use that tool. It's not like all the podcasts in 5 years are going to be AI podcasts. Some of them will be. They'll probably be pretty good. All of them won't be. It's still debatable as to whether people will want to listen to them or not, because I think right now the general feeling is people feel a little bit repulsed when you have realized that you've been tricked into thinking a thing is human that it's not. And so I think if there are things that are AI created content, there'll need to be a disclaimer. And my pondering is if that becomes a competitive disadvantage. I don't know. Over time, probably less. But in the immediate future, I think that will be true.
I was just going to say, I feel like when I talk to my friends, like my normie friends, it's fascinating. My middle-aged mom friends, like they've never used it because they don't understand it. And I use it all day, every day.
Right.
There's not a day that goes by when I don't use it. So I feel as if the world is like splitting into the people who get it, because it's not just, I need you to write my school paper for me, or I need this email, but like when you get good at it, or when, I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I'm willing to engage it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like me on steroids. So
yeah.
Whereas before, this is something that is hard to admit, but because of AI, I have let go of some of the people who would do random tasks for me.
Yep.
I don't need that anymore because
You can do more. Yeah.
I can do more.
Yep.
So it's not replacing me. It's just me
Superpowering
faster.
you. Yeah, totally. And I think part of the reason, for a lot of your friends or people in our circle, kind of same thing, is like, it's a tool that is immediately useful for us. And I think if you're building houses, there'll probably be ways that you can use AI moving forward. But the easiest, most applicable use of it is squarely in our world. Software development, content creation, brainstorming, ideation, email writing. But for my friend who does woodwork, there's probably some use cases for it. I don't know the percentage allocation of jobs in the US, but my guess is that, there's a high percentage, 50%, 70%, I don't know, of jobs that aren't primarily knowledge work jobs that ChatGPT would be something you'd use all the time. So I think that's part of it. Is for a lot of people, it's like, well, you run a street sweeping business. If you're the entrepreneur that runs it, you could probably use it. But like all the people who are going out to do the street sweeping, probably not immediately applicable for them. So I think in terms of like the broader question of like, is this going to replace all the jobs in the world? Probably not. Is it going to replace a lot of knowledge work? Probably. As people who use it become better at it. Is it going to consume some of the content creation jobs? Probably.
Right.
And that's the question that I think is unknown right now, is to what degree will that happen?
But also, what are the jobs coming that we couldn't anticipate? For example, like we needed iPhones first before you could have Uber. So Uber was not a thing without the iPhone. And so it's this strange phenomenon where nobody knew what the iPhone was going to open up and unlock. But now, who could live without Uber?
Yeah. And I think one of the thoughts I've been having, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, is an increasing value around physical things, whether it be in-person meetups, in-person gatherings, even consumer product goods. Like I think as systems, processes, information, whatever it might be, becomes more democratized, where more people can create a website easily, spin up a social media account, I think there'll also be the democratization of product. And I think it'll be easier, much like 10 to 15 years ago. It was kind of hard to spin up a website. There's a lot of technical considerations within it. That got easier and easier and easier. And now you can probably get a website up if you worked hard, no matter your technical expertise. I would imagine in the decade to come, it'll become easier and easier to create a physical product within the world, whether it be, a candy bar or a drink or, something you put on your desk. 3D printing is becoming easier. So when I think of what the future looks like for us, I think digital content creation on the web is going to be increasingly important because it's primarily how we are communicating. And having a group of people to talk to is going to be increasingly important, to have people who follow you. And I think having something that those people come to you for is going to be the way that you are able to take that following. And if your interest is to create a business out of it, to create revenue or to monetize that, I think it'll be easier than ever to actually create a product that is specialized for the needs of that person. Not even necessarily digital, although I think that's one of the solutions. I think also physical, like to create a physical product that is specialized for, a family with 2 young girls and 2 working parents, and it's a deliverable at-home meal kit that's going to be, perfectly crafted for you in this life stage, or, 100 different other examples of people with specializing needs. Similar to 20 years ago, there's probably a handful of food and recipe websites. Fast forward to today, there's millions. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a similar unfolding within the world of physical products and goods.
That's interesting. It was prescriptive like food blogging was like blogging in general was the Wild West. And then people got good at it, figured out how to get Google on your site or Pinterest or whomever, drive traffic. And it was like, I do this, then I get this theme for my blog. I optimize it like this. And I feel like what you were saying, which I really liked, is I think things have kind of flattened again. And now it's like, where can you, with your eyes and your expertise, find the gold? Because your gold might be different than my gold. And so, yeah, you got to be doing more testing, more talking to people. It's messier, putting yourself out there, risking, but it's not necessarily expensive risks, right? So because like you were saying, software is relatively inexpensive, get a website up, like these are not huge investments. However, the onus now is more on you, your ingenuity, and your creativity, and where you, with your close-knit audience, connect and find gold.
Yeah. And I think the two pieces with that, it's the gold piece. Is there the need? And then if you have something that there truly is a need, then it's getting in front of the people who have that need. And that's still, I think, both of those are really hard. It's hard to figure out the need. You talk about this idea of product market fit. Does your product is it a fit for the market? It exists within the physical product world, but it also exists within the content world. Is there a need for it? And then how do you get in front of the people who have that need? Mm-hmm. And those are two hard things, and business is hard. And
yes.
What it requires is a bunch of different skills that either you have or you have some of those skills and then you bring other people around to help with some of the areas where you don't have those skills. And I think
this is, though, where I was just going to add, it is moving faster than you want and feel comfortable. Back to the idea of B- work. It is testing, and assuming your first tests aren't going to necessarily work out. I think we think, I did it. Yay. Where are the people? And they don't show up. So how can I learn and pivot and reorganize and try that way? So it's much more trial and error than in the old food blogging world, where if I do this and this and this, I can expect this.
Yeah. I talk about this idea of waves and surfers. And when we've been doing this for 14 years, you've been doing it a long time as well. You see that there are waves, and we've talked about those. It's like industry changes, things that work. A great example is Instagram used to be photos. And if you were a photographer and that was your focus, that was a wave that you as a surfer could surf really well. That wave will eventually subside and that goes away. There'll be another wave that comes, but it's probably not going to be the same as the wave that was before. To paint the picture, it's like Instagram Reels. It's short form video. This is a new wave. And what I'm seeing is a bunch of different surfers are surfing that wave. And it might be kind of hard if you were the surfer, the image surfer, that's where you felt comfortable, because you're having to learn to surf a new type of wave. Mm-hmm. And you could either learn it or you could just not. And you could say, this isn't a wave that I want to surf. And you could decide not to do it. Similarly, publishing content online, there was a wave. And I think to a certain degree, this still works depending on your industry or where you are or what type of kind of following you've built up. But where there's a formula and you're doing keyword research and you're finding an opportunity and you create a templated post that is going to take advantage of that keyword that has potentially high volume, low competition. You publish that, you get search traffic to it. That was or to some degree is, it depends on the industry, a wave that if you are that surfer, you can still surf that and do really well with it. But inevitably, there's always going to be a new wave. And the question that we have to make is, do we want to learn how to surf this if we don't know how? And if not, are we going to be okay with that? Or do we just say, we're going to really get after this and try and figure out how to surf that wave? Because there will always be new waves and things will always change. And the question is just, to what degree do we want to learn how to do that? if we don't already have the skills that are required for it.
Oh, I think that is such a good way to summarize where we are today. And you see these waves, and are you willing to ride them?
Yeah.
Bjork, I love this conversation. If people want to reach out to you, learn more about you, listen to your podcast, where should they go?
Yeah, you can if you have a podcast app, you can just search Food Blogger Pro. We talk to food creators, but we also talk to industry experts, people who are building online businesses, and have conversations similar to this around how we as online entrepreneurs and business builders can be smart and strategic about what's working well today and potentially what's coming down the line. So we have those conversations on the Food Blogger Pro podcast. We also have a tool for content creators called Clarity, which we didn't get into today, but if people are WordPress publishers and they're interested in creating a system and a process to make sure that your content is optimized and creating projects around that and filtering your content, we really wanted to make it kind of this combination of like Asana meets Google Search Console meets Google Analytics, and create a really simple way for people to bring all that data together. That's at clarity.com. But otherwise, Pinch of Yum and foodbloggerpro.com would be great places to check out what we're doing. And if people want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email. It's bjork@tinybit.com. Tinybit is based on this kind of mantra that we have, which is getting a tiny bit better every day forever. And that's really been our goal for 14 years and will continue to be our goal for the next 14 years.
Oh, well, I have to say, I'd love to do a part 2 at some point in the future where we can check in and go, okay, what did we think back then? And what do we think now? Because things are going to be changing faster and faster.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Jillian. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you guys like this episode. For me, my biggest takeaway is Bjork's idea of waves and surfers. It's such a great analogy for the ever-changing landscape of online business. The key is to recognize when a new wave is forming and decide whether you're ready to learn how to ride it, whether it's AI, evolving content trends, or a shift in how we monetize our blogs. Staying curious and adaptive is the real superpower. So if you're ready to ride your own wave, get your irresistible freebie created in about 10 minutes by going to milotree.com/freebie prompts. Start growing that email list so that you can then monetize your audience. And of course, the easiest way to set this up is with MiloTree. So go check out how you can offer unlimited freebies at milotree.com. If you think a friend would benefit from this episode, please share it. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode. And I will see you here again next week.